Hey everybody, it's Marty the JavaScript Party. I'm my buddy Rhett, and I've got her Almond here. And it is 7:59 a.m. April 24th. 6 days left in the month. We're almost there. Almost to May. We are here in Georgia. We're starting to feel a little hot on some days. It's hot and rainy. It's pretty typical. It's kind of like a greenhouse here most of the time. It's pretty humid and sunny. Everything's growing really fast. It's just life is abounding. And according to my computer, right now it's 63 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy, which I would agree with. That seems about right. I don't know what the high for today is. It's supposed to rain some more. It kind of looks like it is. I hope it doesn't, because one of my evening activities I enjoy doing is mowing. I won't be able to mow if it rains. So here's the nut. This is what Rhett waits for. There you go, girl. I balanced the nut right on the corner there, so we'll see what happens. Anyways, so we have this. We are set up to run. So one of my all-time favorite movies. I haven't got to watch it in a while, but I need to. Oh, did she knock it down? No, it doesn't look like it. Did you knock it down? Yes, she did. There you go, girl. Well, all-time favorite movies that I really enjoy watching, and most people I know that like sort of, I don't know, do this sort of thing where you have to try to explain things that other people have a difficult time understanding. Enjoy this movie, but it's not a particularly entertaining movie, but it is a very, very star-studded, full of incredible actors who probably turned in some of their best acting efforts of their careers. And I know Brad Pitt's in it and Bruce Willis is in it. I believe it's either called 12 Monkeys or 13 Monkeys. And it's just such a great movie because like what happens is like the main character has to try to explain things that the experts supposedly understand better than him, but they sort of more understand it on a theoretical level, and he's sort of on the ground level. And I do feel like, so I've known some people who really enjoyed the movie, and they were typically like auditors of like they're accounting auditors, or they're computer programmers. Like those are the people that I know that have enjoyed the movie. And like I said, it's not particularly entertaining, and it is pretty confusing to watch. Like you spend a lot of time confused while you're watching that movie, trying to sort of put it together. They sort of, yeah. Anyways, it's a great movie. If you have never watched it, you should, because it's really, really interesting. Some interesting ideas that they sort of go on. But anyways, looks like, so one of the scenes that's in that movie that's pretty interesting is this point where he's watching a movie at a movie theater, and then he's remembering watching the exact same movie when he was a young child, and he's just like, it's kind of crazy because this movie means something different now than it did the first time. And he's like, man, yeah, so the meaning of things is completely based, or is very, very much based on what your current context is. The same story can mean something completely different to you based on your context. And I would say that was sort of when I really pondered that concept. It really changed my life in software development, because I realized that like every time I come through, I can notice things that I didn't notice the time before, because I'm re-experiencing it with new experiences. So one thing that I did just notice was, in the last video, was that when this runs, it always shows the whatever, if you've focused on a specific test suite, it always shows that at the top, and then it show and green, and then it shows the rest muted. So this is kind of how you can tell where you're at. It's something I just didn't notice before. And then like maybe 5 videos ago, I noticed that these are muted if they didn't run, and then they're green. So we know that we ran 3 and we ran it in mesh service. So I'm going to come over here to mesh service, which I believe is in this one right here. Let's see. Let's mouse over mesh. So yeah, mesh service. So I believe it's this one. So that means we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, including this one to run. And I was kind of hoping to be done with all of these by Friday so that I could then move on to resize, add code to handle resizes. Does not look like we're going to be done. It looks like there's 5 of them. Best case scenario at the end of Saturday or possibly at the end of Sunday, I'll be done with those. So, you know, definitely underestimated that. Now, in this context of making videos for you guys and you know, just doing my own thing here, it's not that big of a deal, that whole slip. But it's like a half a week slip, which in a job would probably be a real problem. And that's kind of one of those things that you're gonna, like, if you were raised in it's kind of weird. It's like it's hard to become a really, really good developer if you aren't really focused on trying to get things done when they're supposed to get done, and very deadline orientated. But then you get to a certain point where things become less and less knowable. And when things become less and less knowable, then the deadlines are harder and harder to predict, or how long some estimations become worse and worse because you know less and less. And then you have to get better and better at dealing with explaining, making excuses, you know, being an excuse maker. So it would be very difficult to ever become a very good developer if you're good at making excuses, because then you kind of lean on that skill. It's bad. Most good developers, most people that eventually become good developers are awful at making excuses. So instead of making excuses, they just try to get stuff done. But then there's a certain point, and I remember there was this book that came out at one point called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," and that's so true. You know, like you probably won't become a really good developer if you're an excuse maker, but once you become a good developer, you better be able to make excuses. And excuses can be truthful, right? Like my dad hated. He would always be like, I didn't want to. I'm not here to listen to your excuses." You know, that's what he would always say. So, you know, like there was no point to making excuses for him because he didn't. But, you know, when you're actually trying to do something, like, you know, let's say you're an auto mechanic and you're supposed to replace someone's brakes, and then you call the part shop and you say, "Hey, when can I get some brakes?" And they're like, "Oh, okay, we should be able to get some brakes today out to you at noon today." And then noon comes and then they can't get brakes, and then they tell you in 2 days they're going to be able to get brakes to you. And, you know, for whatever reason you have to use them. Well, then you got to call the customer and give them an excuse. Even though it's the truth, there's nothing you can do about it. You know, it's still an excuse. So, you know, it's one of those things, you know, that a skill you're gonna have to learn. If you're watching these videos, you're probably not an excuse maker by that's probably not your a skill that you developed in your youth. But now, as you grow, and I think literally the last time I looked at my analytics, 100% of people, you know, statistically 100% of people that watch my videos are between 20 and 30 years old. So, you know, as you're into young adulthood, you know, unfortunately that thing that probably got you to where you would want to watch a video like this and understand how things work is probably a hard-nosed, get shit done, doesn't matter, I got to get it done, let's get this done, no excuses. That mindset is a great mindset. It's probably what got you where you're at. But now, once you get there, unfortunately, you didn't develop your excuse making, your lame ass excuse making skills, but you're probably going to have to figure those out, because, like, just losing your mind and melting down when things don't work out isn't gonna fly in a professional environment. All right, so it looks like we are actually executing all of our functions, but we're only executing 15 out of 20 lines, 6 out of 10 branches, and 15 out of 20 statements. So let's go ahead and click in there. It looks like we need to actually call update geometry while the mesh is true. And it looks like that's all, and we need to pass it a geometry, we need to pass it the ID, and it needs to have and it looks like the default is set to true. What happens if I mouse over this? Branch is not covered. So I don't know if they're saying that so it doesn't make sense that, yeah, who knows what this means, because it says branch is not covered, but then over here it says this didn't run. So it's like indicating that this ran, but it never got in here. Maybe because the mesh ID, I don't know. What does this say? Statement not covered. Yeah, I don't know how that could possibly, that doesn't even make any sense that ever happened. But it looks like all of our problems are in here. So let's go ahead and go to our update mesh geometry. Probably the easiest way to find that, it's there, but probably the easiest way to find that would be to do a search like this. Come into here. And it's in 2 files, and we know that we want, it's kind of weird. Oh, okay. We know that it's not the ST that we're working on. So this wasn't a good way to find this, because this wasn't the test. This was the actual thing. But if we click on here and then we go in the file view like this, it just happens to be in the same folder. That's probably not going to be the case. That may not be the case in your code base. Who knows? It might not. So it should dispose of a material that is not an array. So that was that. And then it should update the geometry. All right. So what do we got here? I feel like that can be kind of confusing too when it's here like this. You'd be like, what the heck am I looking at? But so you got to pay special attention to this down there. I think you can sort of mitigate that issue, yeah, by like, yeah, because that wasn't the only one. So Control Z. I don't know what is causing this. Oh, it's this. No? I don't know. I guess it's the little note. What if I hit save? Will it go away? No. All right. So anyways, so we are going to create a specification. We're going to use the it function, and that is another word for specification is a test. And we're going to give it one of its first argument, which is, I believe, called the, what is that called? That is called the expectation, which is a textual script description of what the spec is checking. And we are checking, we're saying should update a mesh geometry. That, to me, that is was always one of the hardest things when I had to write unit tests, was what the heck do I name this? For a long time, I'd liked to put like the name of the function in there, because it just, when you get in these enormous code bases, it can be so much easier to find if there's something to a unique string to search on. I almost always kind of wanted to put a number, like an ID number, in front of every one of these or something like that. Some kind of unique indicator, because trying to find the unit tests can be really challenging. But okay, so we are going to need a mesh ID, and we're going to need a geometry, and we're going to need, and I think it's set to true. So we're going to need to create a mesh, which I think we do this, right? So we do that here. So I'm just going to copy this code up here. But I like this better because I use a better name. So I'm evolving. But I would like to leave it in the evolution in the fossil. In the, to be able to say, okay, this was done sort of before I started doing this. In the fossil record, I don't want to go back and sort of. Well, one thing is, in general, I don't like to change things if they're not broken, and if they're if they're working as hoped and they're not broken, I don't want to change anything, because if something does get broken, I don't want to have to waste cycles looking over this going, oh, okay, that didn't change anything. I'd rather just be able to see what actually changed. So it's just a general habit. And we do need a geometry, right? Which we do not have. So do we get a geometry on this first one? No, so we need to create a mesh geometry. And we need to create a box geometry specifically. So, but I think when we create a mesh, we automatically, well, if we create an ST mesh, I don't think if we create a mesh, it just creates a 3 mesh. It does not give us a geometry. So let's go ahead and create a 3 geometry. I think we want to import 3. So let's go ahead and do that. First, I'm just going to copy this up there. So, I already did that. Okay, so then we want to create a new box geometry. So I don't remember. I don't know what we have to give it, though. So we may not have to give it anything. We might have to give it something. Box geometry is equal to new. Is it like, how do you do that? 3 dot. And it looks like we have to give it a couple of things. Oh, that doesn't look like we have to give it nothing. I think it probably defaults to 1111. And this will tell us, yeah. So it wants a width, a height, a depth, a number of segments, a height segments, and a depth segments. And each one of those has a default if you don't give it to it. So we'll just go with the defaults. And so now we have a box geometry. So we want to update our mesh geometry with this box geometry of ours. So service. So by default, the service that we are actually testing is named service. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but that's the way it works. And then we want to update mesh geometry. And we would like to give it our mesh ID. And we would like to give it our geometry. And we'll let it go with the defaults. And we're just going to hit save and just see if that works. See if something breaks or not. We do not have an actual test yet. Yeah, so that worked. That gave us 100%. 100. Perfect score. But if we look over here, up in here, we see that we got one muted one in the middle there. And we also have spec has no expectation in all caps right there. They probably should have made that like red or something, or yellow or orange, or some sort of warning or something like that. But anyways, they didn't. Um, and like, I mean, I didn't even have an opinion about that a month ago. Now I have opinions about it because I understand better now. Um, I've gone through this a few times, so now I have, and there's nothing wrong with that. So now this expect is our, see, I was calling that our assertion, but it's not. And unfortunately, they don't give it a name because this whole thing here, this callback is our assertion, right? It's, the second one is called an assertion. So I don't know what this is, our expectation, I guess. Creates an expectation. So we expect. And we are expecting that our, I guess what we want to do is get our mesh. And so, okay, so you would think, this is a good chance for me to talk about something. So you would think that if I say this, const mesh equals service dot create, no, get mesh by ID. And so I just remembered that because that's how we've been doing it. And then so we say expect mesh dot geometry to equal box geometry, right? Box geometry. And we'll hit save and just make sure that it passes. Hopefully we have 5 passes. I don't see why we wouldn't, but I've been wrong before. Oh, okay, I guess it's still, but we don't have a minute. I'm going to circle back and I'm going to explain something here in a second, but okay, see, now we don't have any muted ones here. Okay, so you may or may not, A, have been aware, and B, of being confused, or maybe you weren't. Like, why are they equal? Like, this mesh was assigned here at 45. Why didn't I have to do it here? Like, update the mesh geometry and then get my mesh and then check for equality. And to me, that is probably, I think there's 3 huge things that, like, a lot of times when I get hired at a new place, and that's happened like dozens of times, on day one, there's like a dozen, 2 dozen mysterious bugs that I'm able to fix that people that have worked there for years could not fix. And there's 3 things that you have to understand to fix a lot of these bugs. And the first and most important one is the way sometimes JavaScript cares about the value and sometimes it cares about the reference. And this is an example where mesh here, this mesh is a reference. It's referencing something. So it doesn't matter where I check it, because when I do this update mesh geometry, it changes it at the address. So it changed it for this guy too, because all this is a reference to an address. So it would be sort of the equivalent of saying, like, let's say somebody lived in a house and you said, hey, at 680 Merrymaker Way, there's a boy that lives there and he has a red hat. But I took away his red hat and I gave him a blue hat. And let's say somebody else knows that there's a boy that lives at 680 Merrymaker Way and they want to go see what color his hat is, right? Like, it's the same boy. They're both looking at the exact same person. And they're looking, so when you change the hat for one of them, you change it for both of them. So it doesn't matter when you go check to see what it is. It's not going to be like, oh, well, the hat was red when it was assigned to me. No, it's like whatever, when I check for this equality, it's whatever it is at the time of the checking, not at the time of the assignment. But let's say I said, hey, what color, the color here is the color of the hat of the boy that lives at 680 Merrymaker Way. Red. Okay, so that's a primitive value. Now down here, I say, okay, let's make his blue, and then I say, is red equal to blue, right? Because when it's a primitive, so if it's a number or a string or something like that, it's the actual value that you're comparing. But when it's a object, it isn't the actual. It's whatever is happening at that reference at the time that it was checked, and that is very, very confusing. I've seen people with 15 years of experience, brilliant developers at, like, everyone is like, they're like the rock star of wherever they work, and they don't understand that. And because you can go a long ways in JavaScript without understanding that. So anyways, that is something to keep in mind and try to kind of grasp. And very, very, took me forever to grasp it. Once I grasped it, it was so simple that I can't understand why it's not obvious to everybody else. And that is probably one of the major killers for a lot of developers, is like, if you understand something that's extremely complex and it's obvious to you and you can't understand why other people, it is so hard not to be an a-hole. And it is very, very difficult to work in modern day. It used to be like it was expected for elite developers to be a-holes, but that is no longer expected or even tolerated. So you still have to be nice, even though no one can understand it. And you will probably, like, if you do understand it, you will probably have to explain it to somebody at least 20 or 30 times before they'll get it. And once they got it, they're gonna get it, and they'll be like, I always got it. They won't even remember that they didn't understand it, and they'll think that everybody who doesn't understand it's an idiot. It's kind of the nature. So hit save. Just make sure we still have 100% at all levels. Check our time. I think I'm finally like recovered from the time shift of daylight savings. Like, basically, whatever, I don't know, I think we're in daylight savings, but I don't know, maybe we just left daylight savings. I can never figure that out. But whenever it shifts, especially this one where we went to earlier, so we lost an hour. When we went to earlier, I tried to immediately change. I tried to go to bed at 9 every night. I tried to immediately go to 9, and then I just sort of laid in bed awake and stuff like that. I think that was a mistake. I should have stayed going to bed at 10 and sort of worked my way back. But I finally, because the whole strategy to going to bed changes dramatically. Right now, what has to happen is at like 7 o'clock, I have to have one goal and one goal only, and that's to be in bed by 9. So I need to start ramping down everything, make sure I have everything that I'm ready to go to bed. Whereas like in the other one, it's like slow. Like, it gets dark and you're just winding down and you're kind of trying to make it to the time where it's time to go to bed, because it's been dark for a long time and everything's done and you're just sort of chillaxing and all that. And then you see, oh, okay, 9 o'clock has come around. It's time to go to bed, because it gets dark in the other thing in the winter at like 5 o'clock. During the darkest part, it's just pitch dark. And when we lived in Florida, in Destin, Blue Water Bay, Florida, Fort Walton Beach, Crestview, we lived in that area over there, it would be pitch dark at 4 o'clock in the afternoon at certain parts. So you're just kind of done. You're done, and you're just sort of winding down. And like, if it's pitch dark at 4 o'clock, you have 5 hours before you have to go to bed. If you go to bed at 9, So, anyways, we still have 100%. We just finished mesh. So now we're to the renderer. Let's go to our renderer, and I still have 30 minutes. So good for me, probably not good for you. This video goes on. I do watch these videos though, so I actually find them to be kind of enjoyable to watch. and listen to. But let me do this. F describe. Let's see where we are on renderer service. So it says it's still executed 48. So it has not updated. I'm going to give it another 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it did not. It did not. I changed it and it did not update. See, this is the kind of stuff that'll make you crazy if you don't have your head on straight. So if you're in zombie mode, you're like, okay, so I have 100%, I'm good, and all that. It does look like I do a good bit of unit testing in here, and render service doesn't have a whole lot to it. So it does have this interesting set animation function. So I'm going to kill it now. I don't know why I don't always have to kill it. I don't know why sometimes it just updates on its own. Sometimes it doesn't. But you got to keep your head on a swivel. I was actually watching the last Angular live stream. It was pretty funny. They built like, I can't remember the name of the kind of, but basically it's a program that walks you through prompting an AI. So like they were making a story. So it's kind of like you could just get an AI and you could say, hey, I would like to make a story. I want it to be about the Southwest, and I want it to feature a horned toad and the color turquoise, and mention different palettes that you would normally see in the Southwest, and some plants and stuff. And I would like it to have like the horned toad to have like an adventure and to become fast friends with a jackrabbit. And it would create like a really cool little story for you. And then you could also like, there's other AIs that you use to make you pictures based on that and all that. And this tool kind of prompts the human to be able to put together good prompts for the AI, so that then, and so it's kind of funny because like the AI needs prompting, but so does the human. The human needs prompting too, and yeah, it's weird. All right, so we ran 3. That's these 3. Looks like they all have it. It's called render service. Let's hit reload. Drum roll, please. 55%. So it looks like we never call this. We want to be able to give. We never render from here, and we never call this. It'll be very interesting to see because when you come down here, you don't really see anything, but sometimes you actually get an actual visualization, and it will be interesting to see when we call render scene if we actually do end up with a visualization. So we still have a few minutes. Let me continue. How long is this video? See, I've been very limited by the amount of time because I've been having a hard time waking up, but finally I'm like back into a good sleep routine. So renders a renderer, I guess. And we need a 3 scene, we need a perspective camera, and yeah, this doesn't we have a create renderer, and then we're going to need a scene, which I think we can just have it create our own scene, and perspective camera. And I bet you they all have defaults. So let's see what happens. Renders the renderer. Okay, so we are going to create a new test, which another way to say that is we're going to create a new spec or a new specification, and should render a render we're going to give it our assertion, or which is a callback function. And then I guess we're going to say create a renderer. And interestingly enough, okay, so there at this, oh, renderer ID. Oh, so I like how I did that. Well, oh, so that was smart. Well, I don't know. I think I like this better. Const renderer ID is equal to 1. And then I like how I kind of like how I did that, but I don't really like just tossing the one in there. So in our evolution, at some point we were here. So we have our renderer, and then we want to create our const, and we want a, do we import 3? We do not import 3. Looks like we imported this and didn't need it, so let's go ahead and get rid of that. Let's import 3 from 3. Const. What is this thing going to be? It's a scene. And it is a 3 scene. And we'll see if we can just say new 3.scene. And let's see, just mouse over. So remarks, creates a new scene object at C. I have never seen anything. At remarks, create a scene, official documentation. So it looks like they gave us like links to things. Let's have it open our external site, and I'll show you guys what we got over here. So that's pretty nice, actually. Man, that is freaking sweet. It would be fun to dig into that at some point. But then the second thing is multiple scene comparison. Oh, this is an example. At C manual, creating a scene, official documentation. And is that the same place? Creating an introduction, creating a scene. Yeah, scene. So it's the same place, but a different thing. And then this is actually a link to the source code at ThreeJS. At GitHub. So this is the actual source code, I guess, of what it does. So it's pretty, that would probably be fun to dig around in. Background intensity, background rotation. Oh, I bet that could be really, really crazy. All right. So now we want to create a camera, and it's going to be a perspective camera. And I think it does matter because I do want to also have, or I think they're called orthoscopic cameras. And I have no idea why they ever invented those things. It would be very interesting to understand that. New 3.perspective camera. So that's one thing, you can, I think it's been very consistent by ThreeJS is that they always have defaults for everything. So we got the FOV, which is the frustum vertical field. Default is 50. So I believe it's like when you look in here, how much is shown. And it is wild if you play around with that, like if you go outside or whatever and you do that, things do get bigger as the frustum gets smaller, and then as it gets bigger, things get smaller. So that's basically the effect you're going to get, is if the frustum is bigger, it'll get bigger, it'll get smaller. It's like a a focus. Like if you're trying to create a focus effect on something, maybe you could animate Fullstrom. Then aspect ratio is like the height and width of the field. So if you don't match it up with that, things can look fairly distorted. So you might want to like create like, if you wanted to create like sort of the effect of like being drunk or something, or like waking up and things sort of blurring, you could maybe change the aspect ratio of things, as you're as with time. And then near is like, it won't, in this case, it wouldn't render anything that's closer than zero point 0.1 from the camera, and far as it won't try to render anything that's more than 5,000 or 2,000 from the camera. Now, I never noticed that when you click over here, you get a whole different sort of set of stuff, of documentation when you click over the type. Oh, okay, so that's what I was doing. And then over here, no, so this was identical, but I guess that's just like kind of a coincidence. All right, so now let's go ahead and render service dot render, and we have our renderer ID that we created up on line 31. We have our scene, which is all defaults, and we have our camera, and we called it perspective camera. Like I said, I do feel like that orthographic camera just has to be powerful. So I do want to be able to change from perspective camera to orthographic. And I think maybe orthographic cameras, maybe someone said that they're useful for 3D rendering, like VR, where you have like two different things. I don't know. So anyways, so now we have our service renderer. So what I'm hoping is that this gets called, that this goes away and the number goes up. Let's save, see if things run. Generated. I don't think it ran anything though. Oh yeah, there we go. See, sometimes it's just like slow. It's upset that that one has no expectations. So I've never noticed this before. It's been right in front of my face this whole time, but I just didn't notice it. Now let's hope that we have an increase. Yep, we got an increase. So what do we want? We want to make sure that our perspective, that our service, that our renderer, I guess we want to make sure that something in the renderer itself is that. And I don't, oh, so we do have a get renderer by ID, so we can get our render const. And it's renderer, and it's a 3 dot WebGL renderer. And maybe I'm just finally using these things in a way that unit tests were meant to be used. Maybe that's what's happening, because I do feel like I'm getting a lot out of this right now. Maybe it's because I've I'm no longer fighting with the unit tests. I understand how to do the unit tests. So maybe that's what it is. Now, does a renderer have a scene or a camera? No. I don't know how. I don't really know exactly what we want to test. Does that have a get? get scissor test. Like, I wonder if I can get the camera from the renderer. Let's go ask ChatGPT. In ThreeJS, is there a way to retrieve the camera from a renderer? You cannot directly retrieve the camera. Okay, how about the scene? Same deal with the scene. So I'm trying to updates the scene and twist that has a, I guess there's no reason not to pass it this. Okay, how about this? Let's try this. I am trying to unit test this function. Okay, so I see, I don't want to do that. That's stupid. All right, so I feel like this is no better than just saying, is the renderer truthy? Right, like I don't, like have been called, like, oh, test to see if it's been called. Maybe one day I'll grow up. Maybe I don't understand that, but I think that, so I'm just going to say expect renderer to, and I know this isn't great, but truthy. And hit save. I shouldn't get my thing. Renderer has no expectations, so I didn't. And we have our, yeah, that went away. So now all we have to test is if the animation function gets set. I'm curious though, like on this thing, did we, now that we have a renderer rendering now? All right, so tomorrow we'll test this. Tomorrow will be Friday, so I do not think we'll be done with this, and this at the end of tomorrow. Hopefully we'll be done with them at the end of Sunday, I guess is probably a best case scenario. Maybe possibly end of Saturday, but probably end of Sunday. This will be done. Let's see. Scene, does the scene look like it's going to be hard? Okay, scene should be trivial. It's a little bit adding a mesh, but, and then utilities. So there's two of them. This one might be tricky because of this crypto subtle digest. I don't know. Maybe not. Constructor get hash gets a promise. Yeah, this one's probably going to be a good one to spend a little bit of time on because we get to deal with promises. And then this one should be trivial. And then visualization. Yeah, it looks like that's, yeah, I think Sunday's probably a best case scenario. I don't think it's going to be any faster than that, unfortunately. It is 8:49, so I got a good bit of time to, I have to start work at 9 o'clock, so that gives me like 11 minutes to upload this file and be ready to roll. Happy coding, everybody. Bye.